Hey everyone, it's Richard DeBanks, founder and CEO of Athletic Alliance Sports Supplements Incorporated. And we are kicking off a new show here on YouTube, on the YouTubes, called Inside the Alliance. And we're going to give you all the updates on what's happening with Athletic Alliance, new products that we're developing or working on, changes, new retailers, ingredients, how they work, positive stories from athletes, before and after stories from customers that have used the products, all that good inside baseball kind of stuff, right? And today's show is powered by Athletic Alliance Havoc Neuro. This is a cognitive pre-workout. It is one of the best damn pre-workouts I have ever tried, if I say so myself. Probably my go-to. This is Frostberry. What I like about it is you get all the benefits of a pre-workout, but you get the mental contributors like alpha GPC, huperzine, forskolin, of course, which has a lot of benefits, and we got a separate video on that. But be sure and check this out. And if you want, you can get all of our products either at GNC right across Canada, the ones that are open right now, Popeyes in British Columbia, GNC across North America, Body Energy in British Columbia, SVN online, Amazon online for some products, and you can go to athleticalliance.net and enter coupon code RIC25 if you want to buy directly from us and get 25% off. So today's show, we are going to be talking to Brendan Gillanders. He's a former college standout and a current member of the Ottawa Red Blacks in the CFL. He's a great running back. And he's got a great story, and he's also got a degree in kinesiology. So there's a lot we can learn from Brendan, and I think you'll find his story and his path both inspirational, positive, and motivational. So without any further delay, let's start the show. Okay, joining us now is Brendan Gillanders, CFL running back, member of the Ottawa Red Blacks, at home in isolation in Ottawa. Brendan?
Yeah, exactly. In Ottawa. Yeah.
Are you in Ottawa or just outside of Ottawa?
I'm in Ottawa, technically Manotick, but part of the city of Ottawa. So
yeah, what's the whole situation? I mean, we had talked before, and things were a little earlier on in the process then, so it was still a lot of uncertainty, and people hadn't really sort of settled into a routine yet. But what would you say things are like in and around Ottawa right now?
I mean, I think it's like any other town. It's a little bit of a ghost town. You go outside and there's hardly anyone out, no traffic at all on the roads. It's a little bit eerie, but I mean, from the most part, grocery shopping and stuff like that, everybody's abiding by the social distancing, and I think it's gonna get a little bit harder with the nice weather finally getting here. But I mean, as far as I can see, we're just like the rest of the country, unfortunately, just trying to do our best to get this over with.
Yeah, and you taking the step of now setting up a home gym, right?
Yeah, exactly. I got some more equipment from the stadium's gym, so now I've got some a barbell and bumper plates, and I've got them all set up in my garage. So at least now I can lift a little bit heavier.
Yeah. Are you when it comes to working out? Are you like an all business guy? Like, get the earphones in, don't talk to me until I'm finished, or do you like to like socialize when you're there?
No, you can't talk to me. even if I've got a membership. It's kind of funny. I've got a membership at literally probably about 4 gyms here in Ottawa, just because of working as a part-time strength coach in the off season. Sometimes it's just easier for me to go to the closest commercial gym as opposed to driving across the city going to one particular gym. So, I mean, even if I'm working out with my wife, she knows if I've got my headphones on, she won't even come and approach me. So, yeah, I'm all business. I do my own programming, and as soon as I click play on the iPhone, until I'm done, can't really talk to me.
You're a strength coach too. I didn't know that.
Yep. Yeah, I graduated with a human kinetics degree, so kinesiology, and then I wrote the CSCS exam right after my first season in Toronto. So I was a certified strength and conditioning specialist going all the way back to 2014.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So now I guess then going into university, actually, let's go back even further. When did you first start playing football?
I was
remember
probably
your very first game?
Yeah, I was probably about nine or 10. At the time I started playing football here in Ottawa, and it was for just an amateur football team in the East End in Orleans where I grew up, and it was their youngest age group at the time. So it was as early as I could start playing football. So I think it was 9 or 10.
Yeah, it was tackle?
Yep, yeah, it was tackle.
Yeah. Now there's a lot of I don't know if I'll say controversy. Well, maybe controversy, but there's a lot of concerns that people have over kids playing tackle. I mean, have you had any problems with that or seen any problems, or do you have any thoughts on whether the age should be extended or whether it's just fine where it's at?
I mean, in all honesty, the majority of my friends growing up that had problems with concussions from a young age was actually from hockey. And I mean, I don't necessarily know why, but in my opinion, I mean, getting people involved in tackling and football early on is definitely a good thing. Making sure people know how to tackle is the most important thing, so they don't put themselves in a bad situation. But through minor football, the guys, in all honesty, the problem that I see the most with is when you get into the older age groups in high school football, where guys have been playing for 5 or 6 years and they're playing against guys that it's their first or second year, and just the difference in abilities and knowledge of the game is what, to me, attributes to more injuries than any minor. I mean, 10-year-olds, 9 and 10-year-olds, in my opinion, probably aren't running or hitting fast enough to seriously hurt one another. So,
No, you get the whole group kind of running down the field like
yeah, exactly.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking, I played football for about 7 years, right, up to junior. And then tried out for the Lions actually, but got cut. Didn't make it. Brendan got cut in Kamloops. But the funny thing is, like, this was back in the early '90s, right? I got a few years on you. So back then, I mean, there was no there was no concern for concussions or any of that stuff. You used to get guys running their heads into lockers to show they could dent the locker with their head, and like we would have practices like you know what the Oklahoma drill is, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
So we would do those things and variations of those things. And I was a linebacker, or usually a defensive end. And I remember on one practice during the drill, they had me carrying the ball right through the bags. And there's this little guy. He was a defensive back, but he just used to move like a missile. And for the first half of the season, I had a quarterback mask, so my chin was always exposed. And so, needless to say, I'm running through, and bang, this guy hits me right in the chin. And, I see a flash of light, and I'm down on the ground. And of course, the coach back then, right? We had these old school coaches, and he said, "Rick, that was shit. Get up and do it again." I'm like, "Oh God, get up and do it again." I mean, now they'd have me off to the side, sitting down, and all this stuff, right? Missing the next practice, maybe. But you know what? I'm fine.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
the most part.
That's just it, exactly. And I mean, things definitely have to change with concussion awareness and stuff like that. You definitely have to be smarter than people were back then, for sure, as well. But I mean, the reality of this situation is pretty much there's been a ton of studies that have proven that you're just as likely to get concussions in soccer, if not more likely to get concussions in soccer than in football or hockey or any other contact sport, right? Yeah. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of different factors, and how you play the game is a big part, and just awareness of concussions, as well as making sure that people keep their head out of going into contact with the ball carrier or someone who's tackling, making sure that you're in a good situation. So coaching's a big part of it. And then the other part, obviously, is just making, for me, and the biggest thing is always the lack of athletic therapists that are in the minor contact sports. And obviously I'm a little bit biased. My wife's an athletic therapist at the University of Ottawa, but for me, what's absolutely crazy is minor sports and amateur sports and high school sports, I mean, they're all doing contact practices, all doing contact games. And it's somebody who took a weekend course in first aid, or a high school teacher, or a parent who is responsible for diagnosing and taking players out of games and stuff like that. And to me, until athletic therapists are properly funded and required to be at contact practices and games all across, regardless of the age group, there's going to be significant problems.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say. Now when so you started around the age of 9. When did you first know that you were really good at football? Was it like first time you stepped on the field, or was it a few games in and you're like, wow, man, I'm pretty good at this?
It probably wasn't until I was like 15 or 16 years old, to be honest. I really just loved it. I started playing it because I had some friends that were playing it. And I mean, we were always getting in trouble. The big thing was on the elementary schoolyard, right? And you're not allowed playing tackle football. And we'd always get in trouble for playing tackle football out there. But that's how it started. It was really just to hang out with friends and try a new sport, because before that I was into baseball and hockey, both, and playing both pretty much year round. So, and until then, and then I really didn't think that this is something that I wanted to keep doing, probably until I was about 15 or 16 years old, when I started trying out for some of the competitive teams, and that's when things really picked up.
Now, would you say you were just naturally good at it, or was it more a case around that age you started to focus more on playing and understanding the game, or were you physically changing a lot? What kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I was always one of the faster kids, and I think that helped a lot. I mean, I was super active when I was a kid. I was hardly ever inside. I was always outside playing whatever sport and always running around with friends. I was lucky. The house that I grew up in backed out onto a park with like 4 soccer fields, baseball diamond, and stuff like that. So I literally just had to go out in my backyard, and I had everything at my disposal. So it was awesome. But yeah, I was always one of the faster kids, and then just through practice and the love of the game, really.
Yeah, and so you started playing through high. Did you play high school or community?
I played both. There were years where I was playing 4 football seasons in one year, just based off the schedule. I'd play high school football in the fall, and CAFA, which is the Amateur Football Association here in Ottawa, in the fall, and then in the spring I'd play for the competitive amateur team that basically it competes at a provincial level. So you'd have an Ontario champion out of that league, and then at the same time I'd be trying out for like U17 Team Ontario for the Canada Cup to compete nationally. So yeah, there were times I was playing like 4 football seasons in one year, and it got a little crazy.
Wow, that's pretty durable. That's a lot of contact, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've got a little bit of mileage on my body.
Yeah, I bet. And then, so following that, you went to university, and it sounds like you had the grades and the grade point average to get into university, anyways, right? And you wanted to take kinesiology at the time.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I took the hard way, to be honest. That's why I always tell the kids that I coach now to do as I say, not as I did, because what happened was, when I got to high school, I started playing varsity football right away, right? So I was always friends with grades older than me, and by the time I got to grade 12, I was an honor roll student from like grade 9 to grade 11. And then once I got into grade 12, all my friends that I played high school with throughout the whole high school career had graduated and gone to university. When I was in grade 11, my varsity football team, we graduated. I think it was like 7 or 8 guys that went on to play U Sports football. So it was a crazy year that we had for football in Ottawa that year. We actually didn't even win the Ottawa City Championship. That's how good the football in Ottawa was that year in high school.
What year was that?
Oh, that would have been 2007, 2008. somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we all my friends, like I said, went on to, a couple of them went to the University of Ottawa, a couple of them went to Quebec and played. One of them went to McGill, one of them went to Concordia. Anyway, like I said, we graduated a bunch of guys to university football that year. And then when I was in grade 12, it was the whole to play football, not to get the grades. And I ended up basically almost not getting in anywhere. So I actually didn't even get into human kinetics out of high school. I had to go into a social science degree my first year. And it's funny, Denis Pichet was the head coach at the University of Ottawa. And I remember him specifically asking the faculty of health sciences for me if they could make an exception based on my grade point average. And he forwarded me the reply that he got. And it was just kind of like, yeah, it's a little bit too far off our admissions requirements. So
this isn't Auburn University, right?
Yeah, exactly. I ended up having to I limited myself tremendously. Let's put it that way. I wasn't really willing to risk going away from home to a university degree that I didn't necessarily want to do, because I didn't get into kinesiology or human kinetics anywhere else. And at the time, the University of Ottawa was ranked like number 2 in the country as well. So it's not like that was a second or third choice or anything like that. That's where I wanted to go. But I had to do 1 year of social sciences, and then I ended up getting grades that were good enough that I could transfer over into second year. And then my first year courses ended up becoming electives, and I pretty much just had to take required courses for the next 4 years. But it worked out because I graduated from a program they never even let me into in the first place. So
Nice job.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say, how valuable would you say is the program, like both the high school and the university program, for developing you overall as a player? And, you know, I say this because you, of course, you've gone through it yourself, right? But you also come across a lot of players from all over North America, right? And you probably pick up a lot of things. You probably observe things, and you probably, I'm sure other players relate high school stories and college stories to you as well, and how they trained and how they went about it. And so I'm just curious to know how important do you think that is to the overall development, or is it less important than we think?
I mean, I think the way that I always pictured and the way that I explain it to people is I was extremely fortunate to have great coaching from the time I was young. When I talk about NCAFA, our Amateur Football Association here, and the Cumberland Panthers organization, the team that I played for growing up, I had really, really good coaching from the get-go. And by the time I got to university, I would say that, or sorry, high school, I'd say that high school football didn't really progress me from a skill set standpoint, but it was more about the chemistry in the locker room, right? In high school, you're with the same guys. It's very much a crash course and introduction to university football. You're playing with the same guys and practicing 5 days a week. You're going to classes with them, whereas community football is a little bit different. You might practice 3 times a week and then play on Saturdays, but you all go to different schools, so you're not spending the same amount of time with them. So in Ottawa, at least, I think the general statement would be that the caliber and coaching is probably a little bit better in the amateur football associations, but I mean, the camaraderie, the crash course in getting along as a team, you definitely can't mimic what high school does for you as well. Like high school, I have so much respect for my high school coaches, just because in all honesty, they really made football fun again, as opposed to, okay, I have to do this, I have to do well at these showcases, university scouts are coming to the summer league games and stuff like that. High school was fun. It was hanging out with buddies from high school and still getting to play football, but it kept it fun, which was really refreshing.
And let's not forget about girls, right? I mean, you play a good game in high school, you're gonna see girls through the week, and you're gonna see other people in your school, and it's kind of, it has its own momentum that you don't get through community, right?
Yeah, it was fun. And you know what? Our school was good about it. Like, our school backed us. Luckily, when I was there for the 4 years I was in high school, we had a good football team. But the high school was fun. The teachers understood and backed us. And on game days, we'd be wearing our jerseys throughout the school and stuff like that. So it was a really fun experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And and when did you know that you were going to play, or when did you feel fairly certain that you were going to end up playing professionally? Like, how far?
It was probably, oh God, probably not until after my 4th year. I mean, when I went in there in my rookie year at the University of Ottawa, like I said, the head coach was Denis Pichet at the time, and I'll never forget. I went in, and I mean, you have 100 and something guys trying out, right? And it was the first time I'd ever seen something like that. And I started out, when I posted the depth chart the first day, I'll never forget it, but I saw my name number 12 on the running back depth chart, and I was like, how many running backs? One, how many running backs do they keep in the season? And two, like, how the hell, there were only 13 running backs that were trying out that year. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not good.
Yeah. Well, you must have been insulted a bit, though, right? Like, saying, 12 people and you decided I'm at the bottom.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, but I mean, respect is earned, not given, right? I don't blame them. I was first new guy in, so and at the time too, there weren't any eligibility or age limit rules like there are now in youth sports. So at the time, I mean, we had 30-year-olds on the university team, and I'm there at 18. And if you look at the body of a 30-year-old and an 18-year-old, right, it's like, realistically, it's hard to compete. So, I mean, a couple days into training camp, and I was down to like number 5 on the depth chart and stuff like that. So it ended up working out.
Nice. And then, and when did you know that you were going to get drafted? Or just when did you think, okay, I can actually make a career out of this? It looks like I can play professionally. When did you have that realization?
I mean, I probably realized that I wanted to play professional football probably around 3rd year university. And then I realized that it was a possibility probably after my 4th year. I went through, so after your 3rd year, you have basically the East-West Bowl, which is kind of like an all-star game for the best players across Canada. And then after your 4th year, you have the CFL Combine and the CFL Draft. And obviously the CFL Draft is actually tonight at 8. And my draft story is a little bit different because I wasn't even drafted. What happened was, at the CFL Combine, I was doing really well, interviewed with a bunch of teams, was a top running back in pretty much all the categories, good feedback from all the teams, and my agent as well. And then on the second day, right before we got into the field drills, I basically fractured and dislocated my foot at the combine in front of everybody, in one of the bag drills. And so that was pretty much the end of that for me. And so it was tough. I ended up watching we had a little viewing party at the University of Ottawa. I had one receiver that I played with that year and one O-line get drafted that year. And so I kind of had to sit by and be happy for those two guys while I didn't get to hear my name or see myself get drafted. So it was a little bit of a humbling experience, but luckily, literally right after the draft, my agent called me and said a bunch of teams wanted to put me on their negotiation list and stuff like that. So I actually ended up almost kind of getting to pick whose rights, basically, which CFL team had my rights coming out of university. So ended up working out, and I chose Toronto, and then they were really awesome about it. They brought me into training camp just to meet the guys and get a feel for the team, knowing that I just had surgery on my foot and I obviously wouldn't be ready anytime soon and stuff like that. So ended up still working out and being a good experience for me. But like I said, the draft day was a little bit of a hard thing to endure, but it's another one of those things that kind of just lights a fire underneath you.
Yeah. And now you mentioned your agent contacted you. At what point did you get an agent?
After my 4th year. So going into the CFL draft.
Did they approach you, or did you start looking, or did someone recommend it?
I had a couple people recommend it. In the CFL, I know a few guys that negotiate their own contracts, but I mean, it's nice to have a middleman between yourself and the general manager. You never want um, you never want them to take anything personally, and you never want to take anything personally either. So, I mean, for what it is, I've always enjoyed working with an agent, and he's always done a great job. So,
Yeah. So the kind of leading into that, what's your perspective on the business of sports? Now, I mean, you probably a lot of stuff has taken you by surprise or been, I don't know, interesting for you to find out about that you may not have even considered before as just a player or an amateur player or even just as a fan. So what are some of the business aspect of sports that would surprise the average person or surprised you?
I mean, in the well, the one big thing in the CFL is that I mean, owners aren't getting rich off the franchises. That's for sure. There's been a few owners that have actually stepped in and put themselves in financial deficits to kind of save the teams over the course of the CFL history. So there's definitely some well-respected owners and franchises that should be thankful to some select people. I mean, it's always different. It's always different. Like the big eye opener going from university sports to professional sports, obviously, is that money changes everything, right? Like it's a completely different motive than any other atmosphere I've been in, because at university, I mean, everyone's there to get a degree, everyone's there to try and win the Bandy Cup at the end of the day. And once you get to professional sports, kind of everyone has a little bit of a different motive. You're still working towards the same goal, but the motivation's different for everybody. Some people are there because they can't do anything else. Some people are there for the money. Some people are there for their family. It's a little bit different. Same with the age gaps. You've got 23-year-olds coming out of university, and you've got guys that are in their 40s that are at the end of their career. You know what I mean? So the maturity level all over the team is a little bit different. And also just dealing with some front office personnel as well is a little bit different. The first time you go in and talk to general managers and stuff like that, and just how many people are involved in the football operations room is eye-opening for sure.
Yeah, one thing I learned about football that I wish I knew years and years ago. Do you know who Paul McCallum is? Kicker?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I played junior with Paul McCallum, right?
Okay.
And man, if I could go back, Brendan, I would be a punter.
Yeah.
Is that not the best gig in football? You can play for 20 years. You get tackled maybe once every 3 games, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I'm sure. I'm not going to say, I was going to say, I'm not going to say anything because I've got a pretty opinionated punter on our team.
Well, he's smart, right?
Yeah, I won't name any names. And yeah, no, Richie, our punter, and Lewis, our kicker, know that I give them, I say that to them all the time. And I mean, long snappers also, tend to have long careers and stuff, but it's one thing, right? The game could come down to one of those players, and I mean, you can't miss. That's the thing, is it's a completely different mentality, right? You get one shot every single time, and every single time you have to be 100% on your game. So it's a different type of stress than what the other players go through.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're a kicker, if you're a place kicker, right, then I mean, there's a lot of pressure. But punter, I mean, that's pretty doable, right? So Brendan, if you could isolate maybe to 2 or 3 things that have allowed you to be this successful, what would you identify?
Probably support and work ethic. I mean, from a support perspective, my parents were absolutely awesome. I mean, they literally went out of their way to make sure I had everything I need growing up. I mean, money was never an issue in terms of registration for these leagues, because football in amateur leagues is not cheap. I mean,
cheaper than hockey, though, right?
Yeah, well, cheaper than hockey because of the equipment for sure, but the registration fees and stuff like that are not cheap. A lot of the teams even require like fundraising to pay for travel and stuff like that. But my parents literally never once missed a game. Like if I was 13 years old playing in Toronto, they'd drive and make the trip. They drove pretty much everywhere in university as well. They've been to every single CFL stadium to watch me, except for Calgary. Calgary's the last one that they have to go to because they've flown across Canada. That was one of their goals, to try and watch me in every CFL stadium in Canada, which has been kind of cool over the past few years. But from a support perspective, they were absolutely amazing. My sisters as well. And then just my work ethic. I always say, and I always bring up, I always embarrass my dad by telling the story of he was a Navy veteran he was in the Navy for 20 years. And then after he got out of the Navy, he became a volunteer firefighter. And then after he stopped doing the volunteer firefighting, he started running marathons. And it's just exhausting watching him. You know what I mean? So it's like, he must have done something right, because just like that work ethic and growing up watching how active he was and all the things that he was accomplishing, it's like it was hard not to be, right. If something's worth doing, then you got to put 100% or don't do it at all. And that's just been my mentality all along. It's hard to beat someone who won't give up. Right. So that's just a situation. I've never ever been the flashiest. I've never been the fastest. I've never won scoring titles or anything like that. But I mean, I'm going to be the guy who's annoying you down the field every single play on every single special team. I'm going to be hard to get rid of. And
have you seen over the years how work ethic can eventually overtake talent?
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I would never ever claim that I was the most talented player on any team that I played for. I mean, regardless of other people's opinions or else, I would never claim that I was the most talented person on any team, but I do try and be the hardest working player on every team that I play for. And eventually, like I said, if you're not going to give up, if you're going to put 100% work ethic into every single play, not only just the game, but when you talk about play by play by play, and it gets exhausting to play against somebody like that. It really does. And there's players around the league that I get matched up against, and I feel the exact same way. Like I know it's going to be a dogfight all game because they just don't give up, and it's hard to consistently defend or block someone that's like that. It is.
Yeah. And when you say work ethic, I mean, what does that look like? Like, how does that manifest itself in off season or practice or stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, nutrition, training, sleep, making sure that I'm doing everything within my power to progress, not necessarily stay where I am. And it's the little things. A lot of people have their strength training dialed in, but they go to bed at 2 a.m. every night, or they'll think that they're eating well, and it's just little micronutrients that might make the difference. When we talk about professional athletes and not the general population, the 1% change makes a huge difference, right? Everyone's very, very close to the same level. So if you can get that 1 or 2% per day difference, just that little bit of extra work makes a huge difference over the course of an entire year, right? So it's just literally just about going a little bit above and beyond what you'd expect anybody else to do.
Well, that's one of the things I tell my kids. My kids are very active in sports, and I'll say, you know, there's 100 different things that people can bring to like a competition, and most people will focus on 2 or 3. But I mean, if you can be better at this, better at getting your sleep, better at getting your nutrition, more consistent in training, stronger grip strength, you know, just there's a whole range of things you can be better at. It sounds like you have that attention to detail.
Yep, exactly. And then the other thing that's always to me is that be as versatile of a person and as an athlete as you can, and that goes a long way as well. Literally, I mean, everyone's heard the saying, the more you can do, and it's 100% true, right? Like the one trick pony isn't going to last as long as someone who can make themselves available to move around the field in a football reference. And it's the exact same as hockey. If you look at the number of, look at any NHL roster, and you could probably pick out one or two guys that shouldn't be there from a skill standpoint, but are there because they play roles and they can do multiple things on the ice, right? It's no different in any sport. The more you can do and the more you can contribute to the team, the more valuable of a person you are.
Yeah, that's exactly right, for life too. And
yeah,
Dave, I know producer Dave is dying to ask a question, right, Dave? Jump in, buddy.
Hey, Brendan. Again, thanks for coming on the show. You've given us some great insight kind of on your journey from 9 years old to now being a professional football player. But let's put a little humor into this conversation. I'd like to ask you a question. That question is, initiation isn't something that happens today in sports because, for one reason or another, but certainly I love to hear about, one of the funniest, cleanest initiations that, you're ever a part of in all your career.
I'm not going to talk about what we used to do at the University of Ottawa because I don't want to get myself or anybody else in trouble. But I'll tell you, when I was a rookie, it was a little bit different. When I was a rookie at the University of Ottawa, they basically brought us to this bar in Hull, just across the bridge in Quebec, and set up like a nasty little obstacle course where you'd chug a beer and then go basically I'll put it to this. The nastiest thing that I did in this obstacle course was we had to dive into basically clam chowder, a big bowl of clam chowder head first, and get these mini cans of beer. And I have no idea how long this clam chowder was sitting out, but I stuck my head in, got the beer out, and then literally immediately threw up all over the patio, like literally right beside the bowl. And that was pretty nasty. So I'll say that was probably the worst that I've been through. And then in the CFL, pretty much every team that I've been on, we'll either do like a little rookie talent show just to get to know each other, or we'll make them stand up and sing and tell a joke and introduce themselves in front of the team. So either at lunch or dinner, the rookies one by one or position group by position group will have to kind of stand up on a chair and serenade all of us.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Brendan. It was a pleasure having you on the show, and certainly wish you luck once you get back to the new normal. And of course, looking forward to seeing you out in the field and, obviously cheering you on from the sidelines.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Looking forward to getting back out on the field.
Awesome. Okay, well, take care, Brendan.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rick. Take care.